4 years ago, I pre-ordered this game, and that's not exaggeration. It's literally been 4 years. And now that it's finally here, and I finally get to play it, I have to say, it was not worth the wait. Okay, so I'll jump right in on probably the most annoying part of the game, and that is the narrator. Now, originally I would have thought that maybe the narrator voicing over everything was an excuse to get away with only having one voice actor. Except, they just talk gibberish language that the narrator then translates into half-complete sentences and flowery fortune cookie nonsense. It just kills any real emotion or just natural vibe of a conversation with the character that you're supposed to be having. And unfortunately, it's not just character conversations that the narrator destroys for you. It's every interaction with everything in the entire game ever. If you pick up an object, if you enter a clearing or a new area, if you happen to glance in a cardinal direction and you're playing the game on a Thursday, anything you do for any reason at all, he's going to comment about. It's like the owl from Ocarina of Time, but for the entire game. Here, let me show you what I mean. You are the hero of this story. And what is a hero without a story? And what kind of story would it be without a hero? A good and comfortable couch. That comfort reminds you of a simpler time in your life, a time before Biomutant existed, where you could simply play out adventures of Dust, A-Raw, Link, and all the other heroes that came before you. Mumbles an annoyance at the narrator. Grows increasingly agitated that the narration is unnecessary and intrusive and that the skit portion is going on for far too long. And that seriously happens throughout the entire game. And that's not even the only thing wrong with this game. Another big issue I had, and maybe it's not a big issue, maybe it's a small issue, but the graphics in this game. It really looks like a PS3 game, not even a late-stage PS3 game, one from like the mid-life of the console. It wouldn't be as bad, except the opening cutscene. I'll play a clip. And it shows the generic furry character being chased by a big ogre thing. And it's beautifully rendered. It's gorgeous. You can see individual furs on the character and just the smooth action in the water. Everything looks really cool. However, you get to the gameplay after that, and you actually play out basically that same scene, and it looks nowhere as good.
Better make a run for it. This is not the time nor place to end this story.
The shapes and textures that make up your character are just blobby and lack any real detail. The water effects are awful. It's just a translucent blob that lowers the visibility of the stuff below it, but doesn't have any kind of fluid dynamics. It doesn't really look like water. Everything is just poorly rendered. It's not great. And again, graphics wouldn't be the, be-all, end-all here, but with how long they had to work on the game and how ambitious it's supposed to be, and just the dichotomy of coming off that gorgeous cutscene into the game itself and the massive change in quality of graphics, it stands out as not great. Also, the loading screen isn't even that. It's just a still JPEG of a background render, and not even from the cutscene, which was gorgeous. It's a background render from the in-game not good-looking backgrounds. And it's just a static image that sits there while the game loads the next whatever you're trying to do. So just overall, visually, the game is not there. And once you get past the visuals, the content of the game is also not really there. You go through a bit of a tutorial, you're going through this little bunker area, And then you have a flashback for no reason at all, so they can give you an excuse to give you a bug-catching net. And then finally, you're let loose in the world, kind of. And as you start to wander around the world and ignore the directions you're given, if you choose to do so, you'll find that there's not much. As you walk around, like there's trees, there's grass, there's areas, but there's nothing in them. There's very few enemy encounters as you're wandering around. Occasionally you might find a rat's nest or something, but nothing grandiose. It's not like Skyrim where you're going to find random fish that will attack you, and hermit crabs, and, wildlife, and a crazy old witch lady who summons bug elementals. Like, there's lots of stuff going on in a lot of these other open world games. In Assassin's Creed, you have all the various assassins that are randomly roaming the world and might happen across you and then try to kill you. There's all kinds of cougars and wild animals that'll attack you, and just little bandit camps and things to discover. This has none of that. There's a whole lot of nothing going on. There's not a lot of secret chests, and when you do come across them, they're just loaded with healing items. I don't know how crap the game expects people to be at this game, but even I'm not that bad at a game. I don't need 40 healing items before I come across a real fight. So it's very lackluster. You walk around a lot and there's not really anything to see along the way. And honestly, when you do find things to fight, that's not great either. The combat in this game, it's a bummer. The melee version, you're just spamming the attack button, and when you shoot things, you're probably just shooting the ground more often than not, because the game doesn't actually have a lock-on system. So when you're hitting your melee attacks, you're probably hitting one enemy, but you're just as likely to find yourself bouncing back and forth between the two nearest ones because your character doesn't know who to attack. Likewise for your gun, if you don't manually aim the little crosshair thing onto an enemy, you're just going to shoot at the ground, or a tree off in the distance, or at nothing at all. But that's just how that works. Also, you can learn moves as you level up and get points to unlock new moves. I learned a new one. You hit square, square, and then triangle to execute the move. I know that because I've pushed that button combo a million times trying to do the move. It doesn't do the move. It hasn't happened. I haven't pulled it off once. Unless the ability of that move is to look exactly like the other moves that I had already been doing and do no special extra damage. In which case, great ability. Works like a charm. So yeah, overall, it's just... I don't know. The combat sucks too. A lock-on system really should be the easiest thing in the world, and every other game has them. But this one doesn't for some reason. Also, there's magic powers you can use, but when you're fighting and, you're being swarmed by a bunch of rats or enemy little cat creature things or whatever you're being swarmed by, you're probably not even going to think to use the magic, because by the time you learn to get magic abilities, you've already had a bunch of group fights, so you're just spamming your attack button and maybe shooting something. But honestly, that doesn't happen much either. So it doesn't come up. Maybe that's my playstyle. Maybe other people are using it. I don't know. But for me, it was an extra tacked on thing that wasn't really needed because I'm not using it anyway. But I don't want to be entirely negative here. So let me say something positive. Let me think of something positive. Okay, the game is very ambitious. This is a smaller studio, 101, is it? I think it's maybe Experiment 101 or 101 Experiment, something like that. They wanted to do a lot with this game. It was supposed to be a huge open world game where you can force your creature to evolve and adapt and get little upgrades and implants and whatever that would grant them new abilities to traverse the place and to battle enemies better. They want the action RPG kind of battle system. There's the ability to craft weapons. There's, I guess, collectibles with these little potato people that you gather up with that net that you're forced to have a flashback about. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of stuff they want to do in one game, and it's a very ambitious task for a small, novice, fledgling studio. And unfortunately, I appreciate what they were trying to do, but they did not execute it well. And, ambitions are great. It's always good to promise a lot, but take No Man's Sky and Hello Games. they promised a lot, and when the game came out, it didn't deliver on those promises, and they got flamed hard. People hated that studio, they hated that game, it was a huge thing. For the last 5 years, they've been providing updates and free content to bring the game up to the level of what it was supposed to be when it came out, and since they've done that, they've really endeared themselves to the fans, and so has the game. And if Biomutant does that same thing, then great. I will do another review and do a state of Biomutant 5 years later to talk about how much better it is and how much I love what it's become. But as it stands currently, it feels rushed. No, it wasn't rushed. It took 4 years to develop, like I said. But it feels like what you would get when a studio rushes out a game. It feels like a lot of things were half implemented and half finished. The dialogue is awfully written. There's a lot of times where the narrator starts halfway through a sentence, or the dialogue options you're given in response to a sentence are not responses that anyone would ever use if they understand how language and communications work. It's just, everything's poorly implemented and poorly done. It feels incomplete, is really what it feels like. It feels like everything still needs to be polished and fine-tuned and just balanced more, and it feels like there's content missing. Overall, it just feels like half a game. And after 4 years and paying $60, it's not what you want to get. So, as it stands right now, I would not recommend this game to anyone. It is not a good game. If they take the Hello Games route and they fix their mistakes and they make this into a proper game, they murder the narrator and they actually let the voice actors voice the characters, that would be an amazing start. If they fix the writing so that your dialogue options actually make sense in the story, or even just in the tiny character interaction that you're having, that would be a huge plus. If they fill out the empty world with creatures to fight and a variety of monsters, and there's more collectibles and you have to go navigate different places to find them, that would be really cool. And give me a fucking lock-on option. But if they don't do those things, then like I said, it's just an awful game, and there's really no reason to buy it. I wanted to like it, I really did. I wanted this to be a great game. I had high hopes. I was okay with waiting the entire time because what they were talking about delivering sounded amazing. I was thrilled to play it, and I am just utterly disappointed. So yeah, that's my review. Don't play it unless you hate having fun. And even then, there are other bad games you can play that aren't quite as bad. So yeah, just don't.